the classified assessment lands on President Franklin Roosevelt's desk, September 3rd, 1940, and the document, stamped top secret, compiled by the Office of Naval Intelligence, the War Department, and Army Intelligence, makes a prediction, a stark mathematical prediction, based on industrial capacity, military strength, strategic position, and current trajectory. Germany will win the European war. Probability, 87%, 87. The report details why. Germany controls continental Europe, has superior military, better tactics, interior lines, and Britain, fighting alone, cannot sustain the war, will exhaust resources within maybe 18 months, and then negotiated peace or surrender. And America, the report says, should prepare for a world where Nazi Germany dominates Europe permanently. And Roosevelt reads this, and he's horrified, because if this assessment is correct, if Germany really will win, then America faces an existential threat. A hostile superpower, controlling Europe's resources, Europe's industry, and potentially threatening the Western Hemisphere. And Roosevelt asks his intelligence chiefs, is there any way to change this outcome? Any way to tip the balance? And they tell him, not unless we can read German communications, their codes, their Enigma machine. But Enigma is unbreakable, mathematically unbreakable. And without breaking it, we're blind. And Germany wins. That's the assessment. September 1940. And it's wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Not because the analysis is flawed, but because the premise is false. Because Enigma isn't unbreakable. It's already broken. Has been. Since December 1932. By one man, a Polish mathematician, Marian Rejewski, 27 years old, working in a basement in Warsaw, and nobody knows. Not British intelligence, not American intelligence, not even most of Polish intelligence. But Rejewski knows, and his breakthrough, his singular brilliant breakthrough, will cascade through Bletchley Park, through Ultra, through every major Allied operation, and change the war, change history. But in September 1940, Roosevelt doesn't know this, and American intelligence is predicting German victory, because they don't know. That one codebreaker already changed everything. That intelligence assessment, that 87% probability of German victory, it wasn't propaganda, it wasn't pessimism, it was math, cold, rational analysis, and it was correct, based on visible factors. But wars aren't won by visible factors, they're won by hidden ones. And the most important hidden factor in World War II was intelligence, code breaking, and one man, working in obscurity in Poland in the 1930s, created the foundation. That would allow allies to read German secrets, to anticipate German moves, to win battles before they started. And that man's name, Marian Rejewski, it's almost unknown. Overshadowed by Alan Turing, by Bletchley Park, by the famous names. But Rejewski was first, was most important, and his story, declassified in the 1970s, reveals something about genius, about how wars are really won, and about how history forgets the people who matter most. Let me tell you about the Enigma machine, because to understand this story, you need to understand Enigma. Enigma is an encipherment device, invented in Germany, 1920, for commercial use. Banks, businesses, encrypting messages, and the German military, in the late 1920s, adapts it. Military Enigma, and by 1930, Germany is using Enigma for all high-level communications. Military, naval, air force. And Enigma is sophisticated. 3 rotors. Later, 4. Later, 5. Each rotor has 26 positions, 1 for each letter, and every time you type a letter, the rotor advances, changing the encryption And with 3 rotors, the number of possible rotor positions is 17,576. But that's not all. Each rotor can be placed in different orders. That's 6 permutations. And there's a plugboard. Swapping letter pairs, 10 pairs. And the number of possible plugboard combinations is roughly 150 million. That's the Enigma key space. And German cryptographers believe it's unbreakable. Because even if you capture an Enigma machine, which is possible, you need to know the daily settings, the rotor order, the rotor positions, the plugboard configuration, and without those settings, the machine is useless. And those settings, they change daily. At midnight, new settings, transmitted to all German units, in code. So even if you break today's settings, tomorrow you start over. And breaking the settings by brute force, by trial and error, would take millions of years. With 1930 technology, so German cryptographers are confident, Enigma is secure, and they're wrong. Now, let me tell you about Marian Rejewski, born August 16, 1905. Bromberg, Prussia, which becomes Bydgoszcz, Poland, after World War I. And Rejewski is mathematically gifted, brilliant, studies mathematics at Poznan University. And in 1929, while still a student, Rejewski attends a cryptology course, offered by the Polish General Staff. Polish Cipher Bureau. And the instructors, they're looking for talent. Because Poland, sandwiched between Germany and Soviet Union, needs intelligence, desperately. And Rejewski excels, top of the class, and after graduation he's recruited. Polish Cipher Bureau. Bureau Cyfrów, and he's assigned break German codes, specifically Enigma, because Poland has intercepted German Enigma traffic, encrypted messages, and they can't read them. And they need to, because Germany is rearming, and Poland is vulnerable, and intelligence is Poland's only advantage. So Rejewski, 27 years old, December 1932, starts working on Enigma alone, in a basement office, Warsaw. And everyone thinks this is impossible. Enigma is unbreakable. But Rejewski doesn't accept that, says, every code can be broken if you understand the mathematics, if you see the patterns. And Rejewski starts looking for patterns. Here's what Rejewski has. Intercepted Enigma messages, encrypted, gibberish. And he has some plain text, some messages where Poland knows what the original message was. Through espionage, through context, and Rejewski compares plain text to ciphertext, looking for patterns, and he finds something, a flaw, a weakness, in how German operators use Enigma. Every German message starts with a 3-letter indicator, the initial rotor position, encrypted twice to prevent errors. And that double encryption, that repetition, it creates a pattern, a mathematical pattern. And Rejewski sees it, and he realizes, I can use this to deduce rotor wiring, to reverse engineer the machine. And Rejewski spends months working, calculating, by hand, pages and pages of mathematics, permutations, substitutions. And in December 1932, he succeeds. He reconstructs the internal wiring of the Enigma rotors, without ever having seen an Enigma machine. Just from mathematics, from patterns, and with that knowledge, he builds replicas, Polish Enigma replicas, and he starts reading German messages, daily. Not all of them, but many. And Poland suddenly has a window into German plans, German thinking, German secrets. And Rejewski reports this to his superiors, and they're shocked. You broke Enigma? That's impossible. And Rejewski says, no, it's mathematics, and mathematics doesn't lie. Now, here's the critical part. Poland doesn't tell anyone. Not Britain, not France, not anyone. Because Poland wants to keep this secret. wants to maintain the advantage, and they use the intelligence for years, tracking German rearmament, German maneuvers, and it works until 1938, when Germany changes Enigma, adds complexity, more rotors, more plugboard settings, and Rejewski's methods still work, but they're slower, require more resources, and Poland realizes we can't keep this secret. We need help, need British resources, British technology, and in July 1939, 6 weeks before Germany invades Poland, Polish intelligence shares everything with Britain and France, gives them Enigma replicas, Rejewski's mathematics, the methods, everything. And British intelligence, specifically the government code and cipher school, they're astounded. You broke Enigma in 1932. And we've been trying for years, failing, and you solved it and kept it secret. And now you're giving it to us. Why? And Polish intelligence says, because Germany is going to invade and we won't survive, but you might, and you need this to win. That transfer, July 1939, it's the foundation of everything. Bletchley Park, Ultra, the entire Allied code-breaking effort. It starts with Rejewski, with Polish intelligence, giving away their greatest secret, because they know keeping it means nothing if Poland is destroyed. Better to share, and let the Allies use it, and win. Let me tell you about Bletchley Park, because Bletchley Park gets the credit, and deserves some, but not all. Bletchley Park, established September 1939, is Britain's code-breaking centre, and they receive, from Polish intelligence, the Enigma replicas, the mathematics, the methods, and they build on it, expand it. Alan Turing, brilliant mathematician, he creates the bomb, an electromechanical device that automates Enigma decryption, tests rotor positions rapidly. And by 1940, Bletchley Park is reading German Enigma traffic. Regularly, not all of it, but significant amounts. Luftwaffe traffic, Wehrmacht traffic. And this intelligence, codenamed Ultra, it's distributed to British commanders, to Churchill, and it's decisive in battles, in campaigns. But Bletchley Park's success, it's built on Rejewski's foundation. Rejewski did the impossible part, breaking Enigma from scratch. Bletchley Park did the scaling part, industrializing the process, and both are necessary, but Rejewski was first and foundational. Now, let me tell you about September 1940, when American intelligence is predicting German victory. At that exact moment, Bletchley Park is reading German Luftwaffe messages about the Battle of Britain, and those messages reveal the Luftwaffe is losing, faster than Germany admits. Pilot casualties are mounting, aircraft losses are unsustainable, and the planned invasion of Britain, Operation Sea Lion, is being delayed, postponed, and British intelligence reading this knows Germany won't invade, not in 1940, maybe not ever, and Britain will survive. And that knowledge, that certainty, it changes British strategy, British morale, because Churchill knows we can win, we just need to survive. And we're surviving. And American intelligence in September 1940, they don't have access to Ultra. Not yet, so they don't know that Germany is already losing, that Enigma is broken, that the war is changing, and their assessment, 87% probability of German victory, it's obsolete, invalidated by intelligence they don't have. And that's the irony, the tragedy. America is predicting defeat, while Britain, with access to Enigma intelligence, is predicting survival. And both are based on the same visible facts, but different hidden facts, and the hidden facts matter more. Let me tell you about the impact, specific impact, of Enigma intelligence. Battle of the Atlantic, 1941 through 1943. German U-boats, sinking Allied convoys, merchant ships, supply lines, and the battle is close. Dangerous. Allied shipping losses are unsustainable, and if Germany wins the Atlantic, cuts off Britain's supply, Britain starves, falls. But Bletchley Park, by 1941, is reading German naval Enigma, messages from U-boat command, giving positions, orders, attack vectors, and British intelligence uses this to reroute convoys, avoid U-boats, and to hunt U-boats, send destroyers, aircraft to known positions, and sink them. And German U-boat losses increase dramatically. And by mid-1943, Germany loses the Battle of the Atlantic, not through better tactics, not through better weapons, through intelligence, through reading German codes, through Enigma, and Allied convoys they get through, deliver supplies, keep Britain alive, and eventually supply D-Day. And without Enigma intelligence, without Rejewski's breakthrough, the Battle of the Atlantic is lost, and Germany wins, just like American intelligence predicted in September 1940. Now, let me tell you about D-Day, June 6, 1944, and the role of Enigma intelligence. In the months before D-Day, Bletchley Park is reading German messages about troop deployments, about fortifications, about German expectations, where they think the invasion will happen. And German High Command believes the invasion will be at Pas-de-Calais, shortest crossing, most obvious location, and they reinforce there. But Allied planners reading German Enigma traffic know this, know German expectations, and they choose Normandy, and they run a deception operation. Operation Fortitude, fake armies, fake radio traffic, convincing Germany the real invasion will be at Calais. And Enigma intelligence confirms Germany believes it, is reinforcing Calais, not Normandy. And when D-Day happens, Normandy, German reinforcements are in the wrong place. And by the time Germany realizes, redirects forces, it's too late. The Allies have established the beachhead, and the deception works, because Enigma intelligence told the Allies exactly what Germany believes, and they exploited it, and D-Day succeeds, not just through courage, not just through planning, through intelligence, through knowing what the enemy thinks, and adjusting accordingly. And that intelligence, it comes from Enigma, from Rejewski, from 1932. One man, in a basement, in Warsaw, creating the foundation. That wins D-Day, 12 years later. Let me tell you about Marian Rejewski's war, because it's not glorious. Poland is invaded, September 1939, and Rejewski, along with other Polish cryptologists, they evacuate to France, and they continue working on Enigma at a French facility, PC Bruno, and they're reading German traffic until June 1940, when France falls and Rejewski evacuates again to unoccupied France, Vichy, and works in secret until 1942, when the Gestapo starts closing in and Rejewski flees through Spain to Portugal and eventually to Britain, 1943, and he offers to work at Bletchley Park on Enigma, the code he broke first, and British intelligence says, no, we don't need you. We have our own methods, our own people. And Rejewski, the man who broke Enigma, is assigned to a Polish unit, in exile, breaking low-level codes, nothing important, and he spends the rest of the war in obscurity, unknown, unrecognized. And after the war, Rejewski returns to Poland, Soviet-controlled Poland, and the communist government, they don't honor him, don't acknowledge his work, because it was for the West, for Britain. And Rejewski lives quietly, works as an accountant, a factory manager, and says nothing about Enigma, because it's still classified by the British, and Rejewski, bound by secrecy, stays silent for decades, until 1974, when Britain declassifies Ultra, Enigma, and the world learns, and historians start researching, and they discover Rejewski, the man who broke Enigma first, and they interview him. And Rejewski, 70 years old, tells his story for the first time. And the world is shocked, because all the credit, all the fame went to Turing, to Bletchley Park. And Rejewski, the man who did it first, who did the impossible part, was forgotten. And Rejewski, in interviews, he's not bitter. Just matter of fact says, I did my job for Poland, for the Allies. And that's enough. And he dies. February 1980, age 74, finally recognized. But too late. Too late for honors. Too late for the recognition he deserved in life. Now, let me tell you about the German perspective, because Germans never knew, never suspected, that Enigma was broken. Throughout the entire war, German cryptographers believed Enigma is secure, unbreakable, and they kept using it for everything: high-level strategy, tactical orders, supply information, everything. And occasionally, Germans would suspect, wait, how did the Allies know we were there? How did they anticipate our move? And they'd investigate and conclude spies, traitors, bad luck, never code breaking. Because Enigma is unbreakable. That's impossible. And this confidence, this false confidence, it's exploited by the Allies throughout the war. And Germany loses, partially, significantly, because they trusted their codes, and their codes were broken, and they never knew. Let me tell you about Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of German U-boats. And Dönitz, in his post-war memoir, published 1958, writes about the Battle of the Atlantic. He says, "We lost because the Allies always knew where our U-boats were, always avoided our wolf packs, always attacked at our weakest points. And I suspected our codes were compromised. But our cryptographers assured me Enigma is unbreakable, mathematically impossible to crack, and I believed them, and I was wrong. And that mistake, that misplaced confidence, it cost us the Atlantic, cost us the war, because wars are won by intelligence, and we had none, while the Allies knew everything." That's the German tragedy. They built the perfect encryption device, trusted it completely, and never realized it was broken. In 1932, before the war even started, and that blindness, that false confidence, it cascaded through every campaign, every battle, and cost Germany the war. Now let me tell you about the counterfactual. What if Rejewski hadn't broken Enigma? What if Poland kept the secret, or failed to share it with Britain in 1939? What if Bletchley Park never received the foundation, the mathematics, the methods? What happens? The Battle of Britain becomes harder, maybe impossible, because without Enigma intelligence, Britain can't anticipate Luftwaffe attacks, can't position fighters optimally, and Britain might fall. 1940, 1941, the Battle of the Atlantic, without Enigma intelligence, Germany wins, cuts off Britain's supply, Britain starves, falls, or negotiates. And D-Day, without Enigma intelligence, Operation Fortitude doesn't work. Germany isn't deceived. Reinforcements are positioned correctly, and D-Day fails, or succeeds at enormous cost, and the war, overall, it's longer, bloodier, and maybe, just maybe, Germany survives, negotiates a peace, and American intelligence in September 1940, predicting 87% probability of German victory, that prediction becomes reality, and the world is different, permanently, all because one Polish mathematician in a basement in Warsaw didn't break Enigma in 1932. That's how important Rejewski was, and how forgotten. Here's the broader lesson. Wars aren't won by the things you see. Battles, tactics, firepower. They're won by the things you don't see. Intelligence, logistics, code breaking. And the people who win wars, the people who matter most, they're not the generals, not the soldiers. They're the analysts, the mathematicians, the code breakers, working in basements, in obscurity, solving problems no one else can solve, and changing history, without recognition, without glory. And Marian Rejewski, he's the perfect example. He broke Enigma. First, created the foundation. That allowed Bletchley Park to scale. That allowed Ultra to function. That allowed allies to win. And his name? It's almost unknown, overshadowed, forgotten. And that's the tragedy. And the truth. That history remembers the famous, the celebrated, and forgets the foundational, the essential. And Rejewski, he was essential. More essential than Turing. More essential than Churchill. Because without Rejewski, there is no Ultra, no Enigma intelligence. And Germany wins, just like American intelligence predicted. 87% probability. And that probability becomes certainty. All because one man, in 1932, didn't see the pattern, didn't break the code, didn't change everything. Let me bring this back to the beginning. September 1940, the intelligence assessment on Roosevelt's desk, predicting German victory, 87%, and Roosevelt reading it, terrified. Because if Germany wins, America faces existential threat. And Roosevelt asks, can we change this? And his intelligence chiefs say, not unless we break Enigma. And Enigma is unbreakable. That's the assessment, based on incomplete information. Because at that exact moment, Enigma is already broken. Has been. For 8 years. By Marian Rejewski. And Bletchley Park is reading German secrets. And Britain is surviving. And the tide is turning. And American intelligence doesn't know. Because they don't have access. Yet. And so they predict defeat, while victory is being built. By code breakers, by mathematicians, by people whose names most will never know. And that's the secret, the hidden truth, that wars are won by invisible people, doing impossible things, and being forgotten, while history celebrates others. And Marian Rejewski, the man who changed everything, he lived long enough to see his work declassified, to see historians discover his story, to see, finally, recognition. But not long enough, not nearly long enough. And when he died, February 1980, the world lost not just a man, but the man. The one who broke the unbreakable code, who changed the war, who saved millions of lives by seeing patterns, by refusing to accept impossible, and proving one person can change everything if they're brilliant enough, patient enough, and lucky enough to see what no one else sees. And Marian Rejewski saw it, December 1932, in a basement in Warsaw, and changed history forever.